the villains. For every good guy, there must be the bad guy. Society looks upon villains with disdain because they refuse to follow the rules. But are these villains really bad or misunderstood? Are they truly out for chaos and blood? Or are they more willing to get out of their comfort zones than the average Joe? Join us for our Villain of the Month discussion. We will break down their philosophy, their past, and their psychology. And then you decide for yourself if these villains are humans or if they are monsters.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Villain of the Month, courtesy of YouTube. I am your host, Sigma Jones. The compadres of the stream is here as well. First and foremost, we just want to give a shout out to all of our subscribers. Thanks for listening in. Thanks for tuning in. We truly appreciate the love and support. Hope you all are doing well this evening or this morning, depending on where you're listening in around the world. So, yeah, to the villain of the month for this episode is none other than Nagato, aka Pay. So, we're definitely going to be in for some good ones on tonight. So, before we get started, let me introduce the compadres. Off to my right hand side of the screen is none other than JJ Starwind, aka the Wanderer.
I'm not going there, Daddy. I'm going to find out if I'm really alive.
What's going on, JJ?
Oh, everything is well. How is everybody here? Not just on the panel, but on the chat. Welcome, welcome.
Right on, right on. Good to have you, good sir. So, last but not least, we have Aizu Sama, aka the Dark Lord.
All creatures need to obey. No one can survive without trusting someone they feel is better, more worthy than themselves. To avoid that responsibility, those who are worthy look even higher, searching for more superior beings. And those superiors do the same, looking for even stronger individuals they can believe in. That is how all kings are created. It is also how gods are born.
Mr. Aizu Sama, how's it going?
Man, it's going pretty good. I gotta say, thank you for having me on, and glad to be up here. And we are starting this month off with a bang with Payne. I'm really going to enjoy this one today. Hope everyone else does too.
Yes, sir. We are indeed going to start this off. Uh, I was thinking it's a cool. It just it didn't cross my mind. Sorry about that. It didn't cross my mind that February is supposed to be the month of love and so to speak, the month of people getting together and showing each other love and whatnot. How ironic that the villain of the month for the month of February is a guy who is the complete opposite when it comes to love, none other than Pain.
You
Hmm.
you know, I wouldn't say he's exactly the complete opposite. Um, I would say that love causes pain, but that's me.
Mm,
Dang,
that was deep.
dang. All right. Well, you know what? Let's just go ahead and get right into it. So, for those who don't know who is Nagato or AKA Pain, he is one of the villains of the series Naruto. To be more specific, he actually makes his appearance on the season of Naruto Shippuden, and he's definitely quite the villain, I should say. He's right up there with Kukumasi put in the chat, Madara and Orochimaru and everything. But it, I would definitely say what makes him a fan favorite is really just his mindset and his philosophy. When I first saw him, when he was mentioned as the leader of the group, the Akatsuki, um, in fact, may make sure I get the name right. So yeah, the Akatsuki group and whatnot. It was just like, man, this guy, his way of thinking and everything is really on par. And even now, in my 30s and whatnot, just going back and listening in on some of his quotes and speeches, it's just like, you know what? I can't really find much fault in how he thinks. But in any case, let me get what you guys. So JJ, what's been your interpretation of Pain, aka Nagato?
Man, like he kind upon the exterior, it seems like the dude was just like super ruthless and scary looking, just given his not just from his clones, but like once eventually found out his true self. Like man, like this guy, you could tell he definitely knows about the monkey or pain, right? But I guess you look at his background and like his life story is like now you kind of as the season progresses, you kind of see why he took the path that he took. Like at the end of the day, he wanted what was right for the world, but I guess with all the trials and tribulations he had to deal with from his childhood on to his adulthood, like he had to take extreme measures to reach that goal, and that include pretty much waging war against all shinobi. You know, not just the people that did his clan wrong, but all shinobi, so that way he can achieve what he perceived as true peace. So yeah, that's pretty bad, I think. Yeah.
Right on. Isasama, your thoughts on Pain so far?
I would say, first off, I'm going to say I think that the series could have ended with him. I think it should have. Um,
Mm.
I think everything after that, except for the Kakashi and Obito fight, was everything after that was pretty lackluster. Um, except for a couple of moments, but other than that, nothing really had the weight of it. Like like when Pain went into Konoha and destroyed it. And,
Oh my gosh,
Man.
yeah.
Ooh,
it
Woo.
was
boy.
it was awesome. And then his reasons for why he was doing what he was doing, I have to say, it's not like they weren't valid. Um, he wasn't wrong. What he was doing, I can see why it was necessary and why things had to be done that way. Why he felt they need to be done that way, and he wasn't exactly wrong either. In the fact that the cycle of hatred and pain is never ending. So I think he was a worthy character for this arc for this anime, and I really enjoyed it. I don't know. To me, he's not that much of a villain, but hey,
Right, more of a tragic hero or
he's yeah, he's more of an
anti-hero.
anti-hero.
Yeah.
Indeed, indeed, and that's where I guess it kind of leads now to this next segment here. What made Payne so popular? So there is a particular speech that he gives in the series when he's fighting Naruto, and the title of the speech is "The Cycle of Hatred." And we're definitely going to be looking in on some more of his quotes and speeches, but this particular one is really what makes him well known and well famous. So shout out to JJ for sending me this video clip. We're going to be listening in on the audio instead of watching the video, but definitely for the audience, you want to listen in on this speech where he talks about his philosophy. And let me tell you, it is some deep and thought provoking. So fair use, but let's get right into it.
You asked me why I'm doing all this. But even if I told you why, I doubt very strongly that the knowledge would change anything at all. But let's say that I take the time to explain it to you. What do you think would happen then?
I have nothing to say to you.
My goal is to fulfill the dream even Jiraiya Sensei was unable to achieve. As I said earlier, what I want is to create peace and bring about justice.
Create peace? Justice? Are you kidding? Give me a break! You killed my master! And my sensei! Hurt my friends! Destroyed my village! After all of the horrible things that you've done, don't you dare talk about peace and justice!
Then tell me, what is your goal?
First, I'm gonna kill you! And then, I'm gonna bring peace to the ninja world!
Oh, I see. That is noble of you. That would be justice. However, what about my family? My friends? My village? They suffered the same fate as this village at the hands of you, Hidden Leaf Ninja. How is it fair to let only you people preach about peace and justice?
What the hell are you talking about?
Once, the land of fire and the Hidden Leaf had grown too big. To protect their national interests, they forced feudal clans to wage war against each other and profited from it. Otherwise, the people of the villages would have starved. As it happened, our little nation and its villages became the battlefield where the great nations waged their war. Each time they did, our nation was ravaged and laid to waste. After many such battles, the great nation stabilized, but our smaller nation suffered, and it barely recovered. You and I are both seeking the very same thing. We both want to achieve the peace that Jiraiya Sensei envisioned. You and I are the same. We're both motivated by our desire for peace and justice. The justice that I have delivered against the Leaf Village is no different from what you are trying to do to me. Everyone feels the same pain when losing something dear. You and I have both experienced that pain. You strive for your justice, and I strive for mine. We're both just ordinary men who have been driven to seek vengeance in the name of justice. And if one comes to call vengeance justice, such justice will only breed further vengeance and trigger a vicious cycle of hatred. Right now, we live in such a cycle. I know the past and can foretell our future. It is the same as our history. So we believe that human beings simply cannot understand each other, and they never will. The shinobi world of ours is ruled by hatred, and hatred alone. However,
Okay, so I am going to pause it there because it next goes into Jiraiya's talk and everything. But Aizawa, you you mentioned something in the chat how the dialogue in Japanese is differently, and sir, you are correct. If only I was able to show
Yeah.
that with the Japanese dialogue and all much better, but unfortunately with
Right.
YouTube and everything with the craziness with the whole copyright stuff, so it's just like, man, if only I could show the actual dialogue in Japanese, man, would that actually send this dialogue more to the point? But
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anywho, to get right into it. So the cycle of hatred. When Pain talks about how him and Naruto are no different, they want the exact same thing, which is justice and peace. How they go about it is just different pathways. You know, Naruto believes in having justice and peace through nonviolence, whereas Pain obviously knows that you can only get that through violence, through pain, and talks about how people's sense of justice is only going to breed vengeance. And that vengeance is going to go on and on and on until it's in a cycle of hatred, which is very profound. So, with that said, gentlemen, I'm going to give you both the floor to give your interpretation of that speech.
I say, man, like what Naruto said to Nagato about like he wants to save his village because look, after all, Pain, you're destroying my village. Is like, hold on a second. Pain was like, hey, we're not that much different from each other. It's just you just want to go about it like Sigma said through nonviolent ways, whereas the only way humans can will ever understand things is through pain. We're hard-headed creatures, so we're not going to stay peace forever. Like we're going to find reasons to fight, no matter how silly or how ridiculous they may be. So I think Pain was kind of trying to make him understand that all too well. But he probably didn't realize at that point that Naruto, but before he was about to die, was talking to his father, and then next thing you know, Nine Tails comes back and they fight again, and then next thing you know, like they're Pain has to flee because his last shell got destroyed or whatever. But man, I'll say this much: like the whole cycle of hatred, Pete, like it's true. I mean, you don't necessarily have to be a ninja to really understand. Like anytime that there's a conflict, people will find a reason to fight. Like no matter what, it's just wild. So yeah, I totally get where Nagato is coming from. So yeah, any thoughts, Eisen?
Yes. Well, I'll start here. He did to the hidden leaf what they done to his village when he was younger.
Hmm.
Um, so it conflict is it's inevitable between human beings. He was right about human beings not simply being able to understand each other. Well, and also I think it just comes down to it comes down to two things. You're always going to have those who are seeking power to keep others from ruling over them. Um, but it's going to be very few who actually seek that out. It's a very daunting task, and it's not something that everyone. It's meant for everyone to do.
Mm,
Um, and the cycle of hatred and pain that he was speaking of, it's never ending because it'll keep going on as long as human beings exist. Um, somebody's peace, somebody's paradise is always going to end up being somebody else's hell. You can't get away from that. Um, and the other thing too that to take away from this is that I mean this was a very important lesson for Naruto. This right here was monumental in his character growth. And it just goes to show that life's greatest lessons are learned through pain.
Man,
hmm
to me, both of you guys have hit on the nail. The concept of there's always going to be differences of opinion. Number one, and then number two, and it actually ties into another speech we're going to hear of Payne when it talks about it. Humans actually grow through perseverance, i.e., pain. And I think that's where, especially in today's world, this fear of failure, this fear of rejection, people think that, you know, you won't be able to succeed, or excuse me, you won't be able to really go through life and everything um if you don't experience that sort of fear, and or I wouldn't say experience fear, but experience the whole failure and rejection, which is true because nothing in life, the great things in life, and a lot of the people that we look up to or maybe admire and all, they didn't get there because, so to speak, they've always had success or they've always had positive things in their life. They will tell you, and anybody on this panel will tell you, pain is necessary. Failure is necessary if you want growth. But in Payne's analogy and his ways of thinking, you're not going to get the so-called peace that you're looking for if you don't have maturity. And his belief, maturity comes through pain, which through the whole Naruto series, and like you said, Aizen, where we see the character development for Naruto, that's really where you see the whole essence of the ways of the shinobi. It has to go through pain.
Yeah, and I just want to say one more thing. Because you spoke about fear, fear of failure, fear of whatever. Um, the most effective way to overcome fear is through pain. Intense pain helps you forget about that fear. Um, Pain can give you the courage to overcome fear. So
Yeah, right. Once you experience the pain, you can learn lessons to either avoid it or to confront it again. But you know how bad it was the first time, so that way the second time it happens, you'll know how to improve upon that or recover. So yeah, pain is necessary for growth. Period.
Man, so let me pull up this article that I have, because it actually goes more in depth about um Payne's cycle of hatred. Now, if I can get this thing to open here. Okay, it's take a little bit to come through. Come on, come on. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, this list is amazing, by the way.
Oh yeah, we're definitely going to get to those quotes and everything. I actually have a
Oh,
separate
so good.
article that actually delves more into Payne's philosophy of the cycle of hatred.
Ah,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, just for some reason, it wants to act a little bit slow right now, my computer. And we'll get it to function eventually. Okay, come on. All right, here we go. Break this up. Okay, just waiting. Man, next time I need to play the whole Jeopardy music. as this computer goes on.
Yeah,
Like,
something.
man, it was working just fine, but all of a sudden now it just want to be slow all of a sudden. Okay, here we go. All right, so there's an article that comes from SK Anime. It talks about how Payne's cycle of hatred philosophy bonds in real life, which is actually pretty detailed. So let's get right into it. So it says the cycle of hatred philosophy of Naruto's villain Pain has been extensively discussed and looked over for years since the character premiered. Given that Naruto has ended, or at least the first series, Naruto and Naruto Shippuden, the discussion has ignited anew with the rise of Code in Boruto and other villains like Madara and Obito. Since Nagato slash Pain wasn't a villain to start with, but came from tragic circumstances and ultimately was forced into that behavior, this article will try to look at the philosophy itself and then judge it. It's always worth at least studying some of the thoughts of those that commit major crimes to see what their thought process is so that the problem can be solved. So, Pain's philosophy in Naruto and how it translates into real life. Naruto has plenty of villains, heroes, and other people that come from tragic backgrounds. From war orphans to slaves to abused kids and scientific experiments, the world is rather cold towards many people, as a massive failing of prior generations. In many cases, yes, those prior generations do bear a lot of responsibility for it. Man, uh, that just brings up another thought process, but I'm gonna move on. We could maybe circle back on it. Anywho, in comes Payne's philosophy, which is that war is humanity's natural state, and that it was his responsibility to save the world from itself, inflicting pain of such magnitude that no harm would ever come again. This ties into his cycle of hatred tangent that justice and revenge are two sides of the same coin, and that the only way to really achieve peace is through fear and mass death. Naruto Uzumaki's counter is that peace from fear or revenge wouldn't work. Even if there was some merit in that, the future of the seventh Hokage worked to eliminate the cycle of revenge by achieving peace through friendship and bonds. Naruto succeeds as Hokage if Boruto is any indication, as even if that world is not perfect, it's better than the world that Pain grew up. The overarching theme of the series is this: peace is not possible through fear, pure order, or mass death, which only leads to oppression and stagnation and is hardly foolproof in the long term. It's an Ouroboros destined only to repeat the cycle of death and destruction after the oppression is removed without a long term plan to diffuse the underlying tension. And shout out to the Prophet of Thought in the series. Prophet of series, good to see you, sir. Now, real world. There was already a massive conflict holding the world hostage several times over, both world wars and the Cold War. These conflicts resulted in nothing but pain, death, and hardship. Plenty of nations are still dealing with the fallout from the Cold War, with brutal dictatorships that feed certain interests being held up as good things and rapid destructions. Even if talking about Pain's ultimate solution when compared to Naruto's, Pain fails even further. I beg to differ, but we'll get to that. Although under the grip of a pandemic, richer nations hoarded cures for themselves during the COVID-19 crisis and spread misinformation. Borders were closed to refugees even before the pandemic, and extremism has been allowed to fester in various portions of the world that is leading to further disaster. Mutual aid indeed is one of the solutions to this. Simply holding a massive gun to everyone's heads will not solve many of the problems that plague the world, nor will causing as much pain as possible. The idea that all that's needed to save the world is one person ruling over it all. Empires tried that and failed. Mass death, it was already done and resulted in nothing but pain and misery for all involved. Oppression still exists in many forms across nations, and simply burning it all to the ground won't solve anything. The point put simply is this: the ones arguing for further war and violence and that humanity is better off oppressed, the violent radicalizers of people like Pain and Naruto have always been the instigators of violence and hatred. They are incompatible with peace and should be rejected at every turn. Humanity doesn't exist to oppress or hate or kill each other. That's a response to extreme trauma. What is needed is mutual aid, trust, and healing with human rights, and ensuring the future is better than it is now, with the richer helping the poor. Okay,
Hmm.
so
What was this author smoking?
I think he had good intentions, but he was trying to make this more easier for everybody to understand when it really is not that easy. It's a lot more
gentlemen, I
complicated
will
than
give
that.
y'all the floor first.
Oh, my bad. We didn't hear you. We didn't. I think you went out there. My bad.
Yeah, I think. I
Oh,
don't know.
oh,
I thought I heard
yeah, my
something.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
his mic's
sorry.
going in and out. Yeah.
Okay, are you able to hear me now?
Yep, we can
Yeah.
hear you now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so before I went out, what I was saying is, um, you gentlemen, if you could give your thoughts on the article. Hopefully, you heard the last part that was given before I went out. But before I get my thoughts, I wanted to hear you guys' thoughts on what the article, as far as what you heard.
Yeah. Um, I gotta start off. I mean, whoever wrote this article, they obviously don't know Boruto. I mean, Kawaki was beaten and damn near killed. Um, we don't know how many other the vessels died trying to become a throwaway tool for oh gosh, what was his name? For the oh gosh, I can't even think of his name now. But for the other Otsutsuki, I mean,
Hmm.
what are you talking about? I mean,
Right.
more people were slaughtered. It just goes to show that Payne was actually right. I mean, Naruto's Naruto's Naruto, the Great Ninja War, the fourth Great Ninja War, didn't even end anything.
Nope. It did
the
nothing.
cycle started again. What are they talking about?
And again,
Right.
and again.
I mean, and then that spiel there at the end about the rich helping the poor. I mean, in what freaking world does that really happen like that? No, people,
Right.
Yeah,
people.
like he mentioned the COVID pandemic. Of course, the richer countries are gonna hoard the majority cure because they're the main ones producing the cure, the so-called cure anyway. You know, so naturally they're gonna help their citizens
Yeah.
first before they spread it to other countries that don't have those facilities to make the drugs. I mean, come on, that's just being real.
I mean,
Right. And even this what gets me about the whole article and whatnot. See, the problem was this: you can't you can't get over differences of people's opinion. Everybody is not going to think the same thing. So with this whole thing about trust, that's another thing. Okay, trying to have people here's the misconception about trust. Okay, when it comes down to working together for the same cause, when you have people that obviously are thinking on the same levels of what you're trying to achieve or what people are trying to achieve as far as their goals, then yeah, obviously there's going to be some level of trust. I mean, Isaac, you know, Sasuke Aizen
yeah,
talks about it himself about, you know, all creatures want to obey.
Yeah.
Okay, that's just basic. Excuse me. That's basic human element. But now, okay, hold on a second. My screen just went off real quick. And everybody can still hear me, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we can still hear you. Yes. Yes.
Okay, yeah. One of my pages just went off because I just clicked out of it. But okay.
Okay.
Anywho, is basic human element. People want to obey. All right. So of course there's going to be some elements of trust needed. But here's the thing. Here's where I think the author just misconceived. Everybody is not going to think the way how peace is given or how justice is given. Especially when you look at elements of what was the crime or what was the fault that brought about vengeance and justice. You know, for some people, okay, being misguided because, so to speak, the laws did not go the way about is supposed to be. Of course, there's going to be people that's going to take matters into their own hands. Now, is it right or is it wrong? Okay, that's where morals come into play. But obviously, there's going to be some elements where the laws just doesn't always work. That's where human elements come into play to where, okay, can things be right about if you go about it from a diplomatic perspective? Or can things be brought about, obviously, through the ruling of the fist? Now, there's evidence in a lot of cases where, yeah, things handled diplomatically or things handled through a ruling fist, it does work. But try to make it seem like, oh, well, violence, so to speak, doesn't work and it only leads to more violence and whatnot. The only thing I can say is this: there are elements to what Payne is talking about where, yes, humans are just going to deal with things on a natural plane. How they go about it is debatable. But there's always going to be that element of two people are going to have differences of opinion. But gentlemen, I want y'all to, give y'all thoughts as well.
Yeah, I agree, especially when the two people come from completely different countries. They were raised in completely different environments, believe in all sorts of different philosophies. There has to be certain parameters set for them to agree for some peace in their countries. Now, I can't recall exactly what happened with the nation where Nagato was from, but there were some things that happened where ultimately his country was destroyed. Uh, and it was probably because the shinobi over there didn't like things that was going on within his nation, and therefore they went ahead and did something about it. And that's what caused Payne to have his skewed view about how the world should function, especially through ultimate peace. So that's why he felt the need to go to the extreme to form his terrorist organization and lead it to the destruction of pretty much all the shinobi world. So yeah, I mean, there's certain parameters that have to be made in order to achieve true peace, but everybody has to be on the same page because otherwise something will always go wrong. Something, no matter how right, wrong, or ridiculous it might be. So yeah, it's very complex when we talk about how peace can be achieved, whether it's through love or through fear. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
Well, I mean, let me go where you started out here with my speech, of course, about creatures needing to obey. Um, I mean, when you look at it, it's very simple what he's outlining here. You have two types of people. You have tools, and then you have those that are willing to use tools. Uh,
know where this is going, but go right ahead, sir.
those that are willing to use tools are people that want power for whatever reason, whether it's because they're greedy or they just want it because they don't want somebody else lording over them. Um, a majority of people don't actually want power; they want privilege. But whenever you don't have power, you don't get privilege. I,
Mm,
I mean,
man.
I, I mean, and then in what they spoke about, dealing with things with your fist. I mean, I mean, I mean, taking power financially and then oppressing people financially is going to lead to violence. So
Right.
I mean, it doesn't have to start with that. But I mean, when people get hungry enough, uh somebody's it's going to start a revolution. And it's somebody that's willing to get blood on their hands will to get out of that position that they're in. Um it's just that you got people that they don't really want to get their hands dirty, so they're willing to settle and be a slave for somebody else's goals. Um, because the weight and responsibility of actually, you know, ho- guiding your own direction in life, that weight for most people is just too heavy.
Mhm.
Whew, boy. Ah, man. Isaac, you went in the direction that I know that it's
Mhm.
definitely not for the faint of heart, but it definitely has to
Never
be
is.
talked about. Right, it never is, but it has to be talked about it. You know, shout out to Friezo because he likes to quote this from low key. People in the end,
They
there's
always
just
leave.
people who just going to bend the knee. In the
Yeah.
end, you will always kneel.
Yeah. It's their natural state.
Right. And that's what if you really look deep into Payne's ways of thinking, the philosophy and whatnot, really that's what he's getting at it. There's always going to be people who naturally are just better at things. Okay? There's people who could jump higher. There's people who could run faster. People who could swim further. Shout out to Logic Fighters. And then he said it best. The only privilege in life is money and the access it grants you. Power resides where men agree that it does. It's transitory by its very nature. There you go. And by that same vein, there's always going to be people who can easily obtain that power, whether it's through finances, whether it's through diplomacy, or it's by force. The question is, and it comes down to the basic human element, whether you want to obtain that power or not. And let's just be honest, and let's just call it for what it is. Most people, the average human being, simply don't want power.
Mm.
Agreed. Agreed.
Man, this is going to be a deep rabbit hole, but okay. It just has to be said. Most people don't want power, they just want to be ruled. And Payne is taking upon himself, like, hey, I mean, we talked about this with Sasuke Aizen. We talked about this with
Doctor
Doom.
Doom.
Zod. Yeah, yeah. The other people, almost every villain we have talked up to this point have pretty much said to themselves, you know what? Because there's people who simply don't want to take power and simply don't want to take matters to their own hands, hey, I might as well help them out. I might as well put myself in that position to lead them because humans just want to be led.
Or because there's no one else well equipped to do it other than me. Why would I leave my fate to someone else who's not equipped to lead to get us both killed?
You were bison. Yep. Oh, Sigma, you're muted. There you go.
Just for a moment.
Oh, okay.
Just fixing something on the back end. But okay. All right. Let me bring up the next element, the next speech and everything. Um okay. Let me bring up the next trying to bring it up here. Okay. Bring it up the audio. Okay, here we go. Now this one, and of course, we're not gonna play the visual and everything. It's just gonna be the audio. But this one, it is the speech where Payne is talking with Jiraiya, and he talks about from man to a god. And it actually ties in well, Isaac, to a similar speech that Sasuke Isaac gave, but
Okay.
it is a different twist to it from Payne's perspective. But it is very great. So fair use, but I definitely want to play it here from the audio side. Here we go.
Nagato, it's time for me to ask you a few questions. What happened to Yahiko?
Ah, yes. There was such a fellow once, wasn't there? But he died a long time ago.
Nagato, what happened?
Nothing happened. Nothing except for the war. Too many people died in this land. All that pain forced me to grow up.
What does that mean?
That even innocent, foolish children will grow up in the face of pain. Until their thoughts and beliefs are the same as adults.
But abandoning one's love for his friends and fellow man, is that really what it means to become an adult?
Oh, Sensei, you are still merely a man. However, I, mired in endless pain, have matured and become much more than a man. Yes, I've grown from a man to a god. Since I'm a god, all my words and thoughts have become absolute. Poor Sensei, you're still only human. It's not your fault if you don't understand what I'm saying. Things that I couldn't see when I was human are clear to me now that I'm a god. And being a god, I realize that there are things I can do which mortal men cannot even dream of. Or to put it more simply, I have evolved beyond man. At last, I'm going to put an end to this senseless, war-riddled world. This will be my sacred deed. All of humanity, all the nations will learn what pain truly is. Fear would breed a strong aversion to war. Conflicts would cease. It can be said that this world is still in the process of maturing, that it's still on the path to stability. Pain will make the world grow up, just like it forced us to grow up. In order for the world to develop to the point where it can think and walk on its own, it needs the help of a god's hand.
Okay. So that was Payne talking with Jiraiya. Or Nagato talking with Jiraiya. But there's an element in what he was talking there that not many people realize it until they rewind it back and actually kind of delve deeper into that conversation. But one of the things that I took from that, and I really want to kind of delve deeper in this segment here. There is no growth without pain. That is essentially the theme of that speech between Nagato and Jiraiya. Essentially, he what he's giving at or what he's telling is even there's elements of human nature where the elements of the world of how we process information, of how we see, I guess you say, how the world really works. Majority of the time, you won't be able to understand how that world fully functions until you go through that process. And that process usually involves trials and, let's just call it for what it is, also require pain, struggle. Now, here's the difficulty that most people can't comprehend it. The pains and struggles are there to be a lesson in order for you to grow from it. Without it, you really won't be able to grow. But for most people, again, it comes back to that element of fear. They don't want to go through that process of trials and elements of pain where, in essence, they get their feelings hurt. But let me stop there. Let me stop there. Let me ask you guys, what's your thoughts on what you just heard?
Um,
Well, I kind of said it in the early in the stream. Like, yeah, pain is necessary for growth. You keep avoiding pain, you'll never understand the concept of the message or the lesson. But yeah, what I think with that dialogue with Payne and Jiraiya, like, yeah, he had to tell his master, like, of course you couldn't understand because you never tried to dig deeper into solving the problem of the cycle of hatred that the shinobi had to deal with all this time. But now that I can see clearly of what's happening, allow me to solve all these issues once and for all by shedding out unrelenting devastation throughout all of the world, so that way we can have ultimate peace. So you can just sit back and watch me do all the work. So that's basically what Payne was telling Jiraiya. You just sit back and not worry about this. I got this. Yeah, it's wild, man.
well, after listening to what you just said there, JJ, I would say that knowing the story of Naruto and knowing the story of Nagato and Pain and Jiraiya, the other thing what he was saying there was Jiraiya hasn't had enough pain in order to know. He hasn't lost enough in order to gain understanding. He was letting him know he's had enough pain and he's experienced enough pain to grow from that child that he knew into what he is now, which had more understanding of that cycle of pain and hatred, whereas he hadn't. He was letting him know he had grown past him,
Yep.
and he understood better in which way things needed to go.
Right.
Yeah. So, like, in other words, it was basically a student surpassing the teacher in that sense.
Correct, correct.
Yep.
And Logic, he mentioned too about the theory of natural selection. I think that's where I think that's where a lot of people are afraid to come to terms with the fact that really when you think about the whole survival of the fittest, there is that process where when you have two men come together, whether they do it physically or they do it mentally or psychologically, they're going to see who has that who has that, I guess you would say, that instinct of being able to move up into the world, or you could say move up into society. Payne was really trying to tell Jiraiya that, hey, it's just a natural process of eventually you're going to have to utilize that pain to either make yourself better, or you're just going to wallow and, in other words, bend the knee so that other people will eventually rule over you. So either you rule yourself or you just let others rule you. Choose ye to say who you gonna serve.
Yeah, yeah. We see that most people they don't mind having others rule them. Um, they're quite fine with it. Um, just because they're incapable, they know they're incapable of ruling themselves, so they're fine with somebody else doing their job.
Yeah. And I think that's where Jiraiya doesn't see that point of what Payne was trying to say. That eventually children, when they grow up, they're going to see the world for what it is. And they're going to decide accordingly how they're going to go about it. Either they're going to take it for themselves and rule for themselves how they're going to go about things, or they're simply going to let others pretty much think and rule for them. And really, when you look at the essence of the world and how people, function and socialize, majority of people, simply put, just rather have other people, rule for them, or in essence, think for them. JJ,
Mm,
sound
that's
like you were about to say something.
man, that's pretty crazy to imagine, man. Like to the point where you need other people to actually think for you, only because you're not able to be strong enough to endure the pain and learn what hard lessons life has given you. That you have to lower yourself to allow outside forces to tell you what to do accordingly. Wow, it's a hard pill to swallow, but yeah, that's a much of how humanity has operated all throughout its existence.
It
Safe,
it,
safe to
it,
say, yeah,
it really is a hard pill to swallow, and really it kind of comes down to the next article that I'm gonna bring up, where it talks about some of the best quotes from Payne and how um really just how he sees the world. And really,
yeah,
I think it's a great way to kind of like dissect his ways of thinking and see how we think about it or how we share about it. So I'm bringing up this article. Shout out to you once again, JJ, where it talks about the 15 best quotes from Payne and, so to speak, how people view them and see them. So coming in at number 15. So this is a quote from Payne Nagato. He says, knowing pain controls one's words and thoughts. It says, though their battle already began, Jiraiya is still curious about what happened to Nagato to turn him into such a sadistic person. The young boy he once knew was gone, and he wants to understand why he became so cold. Nagato simply states, nothing happened to him, just war. Though Nagato lost everything during the Third Great Ninja War, he still had Yahiko and Konan, his newfound family. Unfortunately, Yahiko was fooled by Danzo and Hanzo into believing his death would bring peace. Yahiko's death made Nakato believe there wasn't any good left in the world, and that only suffering could bring about understanding. Gentlemen, your thoughts on that quote?
Hmm.
Wow. Oh, okay, yeah. I'm just not looking at it again. So yeah. Oh yeah. So all he's talking about is like, man, all he knew growing up was just battles after battles after battles. Like everything was just going wrong around him. So he felt at times helpless and you could say even lonely. Even though he had friends around him, like he just didn't really know what to do until he lost the very person that he looked up to was Yayiko. And then from there he kind of adopted his way of thinking as to how the world should function from here on out. So yeah, I think that's what that quote was kind of referring to. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. This one here, when you see how losing something or someone that meant a lot to him, and it was, and part of it was from someone from the Leaf, and then Hanzo, which was the leader of their own village. I think it was the Hidden Mist, maybe I can't remember,
Hmm.
but you know, losing Yahiko, which is pretty much like a brother to him, it was family. Um, that changed. It changed him completely. It changed. It caused pain for him to grow in a way that he never could have that without that loss. It you can see how it really shaped and impacted his mind and his thoughts from thereafter.
Indeed, indeed. So the next one, number 14, another quote from that same talk between Jiraiya and Nagato. Nagato says, even the most ignorant, innocent child will eventually grow up. Pain understands the harsh realities of growing up and that sometimes children are forced to grow up and mature way too soon. Pain didn't get to have a childhood. His parents were murdered right in front of him during the Third Great Ninja War. This horrific tragedy forces him to leave home and fend for himself. Paine states even the most ignorant, innocent child will eventually grow up as they learn what true pain is. It affects the way they say, what they think, and they become real people. Paine knows this from his experience. Pretty much that is kind of straightforward.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
real
Yeah.
straightforward.
I mean, I'm kind of going a little bit ahead of myself, but another great quote from the Naruto series actually comes from Itachi, where he says, people are bound by their reality. How they perceived reality from their experience is who they are. Both knowledge and awareness are pretty much equivocal. And that's really that's why him and Payne are kind of on the same page. Where, yeah, how you experience reality based on your experiences is who you are. Some people, you know, they've had it pretty good, and their maturity, you could say, is kind of slowed. Whereas others, hey, the harshness of reality came quickly to them, and they had to mature very early. To me, that's just straightforward. But
Yeah.
your thoughts, gentlemen?
Well, yeah, I mean that can be interpreted in the real world. Right now with all the different conflicts happening around the world, you got many children that lost their parents. They'll never be able to see them again, whether it's through missile strikes or they had to flee from their town and they just couldn't make it. Now, they have to grow up fast and rely on themselves until, maybe there's some outside organization that can help them out in finding a new home, or they just pretty much have to be on their own until they find someone that they care about, like someone else. Kind of like how Nagato had to do. So yeah, that's very real, very straightforward.
Um, yeah, the act here of having your parents murdered right in front of you, while you're still a child, and now this forcing you to have to survive for yourself. You've got no one else to help you here, just to survive. That strips away any naivety you could have had, any comfort that you could have had as a kid. Things have gotten real here after that, and you have no choice but to see the world and the way things are, or because if you don't, now you're not going to survive. You're going to die. So yeah,
Mm, 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 mm.
pretty direct here.
Very direct indeed. All right. So number 13, Nagato is quoted saying, "Embrace the fear." Even though many of Payne's actions are reprehensible, his thoughts on suffering are pretty insightful and can be helpful in real life. It's impossible to overcome fear without facing it. People naturally run from fear, but Payne experienced so much agony, he's become immune to it. As a result, he ruthlessly inflicts pain and suffering upon others and callously tells them to embrace it. To instruct people to ignore the destruction and death he causes is insensitive, to say the least. But Payne thinks he is enlightening. Now, this one, okay. So again, this one is kind of like, all right, taking away the ethics of it, as far as how you go about things. This is where I think most people, when they look at Payne and how he go about things, all they're just like, man, this dude is just so sadistic and whatnot. Like, how could he do such a thing? But when you look at the thought process behind what he's doing, Payne is really just saying, look, one way or another, you're going to have to deal with this fear, whatever it may be. You might as well go ahead and either embrace it or let it overtake you. But in essence, it's still there, whether you believe it or not. And to me, that's where it's kind of like, hey, Payne is actually very right about this. You know, you're not going to overcome fear by just ignoring it. You either you need to take it head on and really embrace it and really master it, self mastery of it, or in essence you just you know um just have your tail between your legs and have your belly up and, so to speak, just let it rule you. Gentlemen, your
Hmm.
thoughts?
Yeah, this is also as painful as it sounds. This is straightforward, but this would be a hard choice to make for the average person because like anytime you fear something that can be pretty much, especially life threatening, most people are gonna avoid it no matter what because they're not trying to feel the pain of said result. So yeah, I totally get where he's coming from there, but the reality is a lot of people, your average person, would not be willing to make that sacrifice to overcome their fears of whatever it might be, heights, the water, fire, warfare, another person, like whatever it is, like the average person may not be able to deal with that, or they may not know how to. But yeah, but they if they want to do it, then they got to overcome it, no matter what. So yeah, I see why you must embrace the fear.
Um, Two things. First of all, trying to avoid pain and fear, it's foolish because it's inevitable. Um, the only thing you end up doing is making the pain or the fear um, greater uh, down the road. You end up making it more debilitating. Um, Two, something that you said, Sigma, and about people saying, how could Payne be so callous? How could he do this? How could he go to this extent? I find it interesting that no one would say, how could they have done this to him?
Mm, that is a good point. I mean, they look at Payne and be like, you know, they don't, like you said, Isaac. They don't look at it from his perspective of, okay, Payne is only thinking this because of what has happened to him. But instead, they're like, man, Payne, you could look at it this way or that way differently if you just, do X, Y, and Z. But it's like, no, he is who he is because of X, Y, and Z. That's just how it is. That's just the nature of it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
He's
that
mastered the pain so well that, like it said in that quote, he's numb to it. So he
right.
knows how intense it is. That's why he's not afraid.
It's just interesting. All right, next number 12. Payne is quoted as saying, "We act according to our own sense of justice." When Payne temporarily gains the upper hand in his fight against Naruto, he takes the time to have a discussion. Payne explains to Naruto that his family, his friends, and his village were destroyed by the Hidden Leaf Village years ago. His nation became a battlefield for the Great Nation's War. This revelation causes Naruto to realize that Pain suffered just as much, if not more, than he did. Pain wants Naruto to understand that they aren't different, and in the end, they actually want the same thing. Pain asserts, "You have your justice, and I have mine." Though fans can't agree with his methods, his thoughts are insightful. There's no clear hero or villain in their world. And this is where I have to agree with Payne on this way of thinking. Experiences breeds reality. Yes, you want the same thing, but to say that he is a hero because of how he went about it, or he's a villain because of, so to speak, how he went about that, you can't really say when, so to speak, experiences breeds reality. Gentlemen, your thoughts on that?
Mm. Yeah, I think we had covered this earlier in the stream, right? So I mean, yeah, Payne was just giving them the pep talk of it's not fair for you to judge me based on my actions when your clan, your ancestors pretty much did the same things, if not worse things to my people as a child. So it's like, man, when you telling that, I think that opened up a big can of worms for Naruto to kind of realize, like, man, I didn't know the things you experienced had you turn out this way. If I had seen that, then perhaps I probably would not have fought you at the rage and the vitriol that I did, right? So I think that was at that point after that, the very next scene after they fought and everything, and eventually Naruto found Pain and stuff, and that's when he had the pep talk. So that I think at that point, that's when Naruto kind of understood better how to deal with pain. If without that, I think Naruto probably would have been more like Jiraiya, and he probably would never figured out how to stop the cycle of hatred. So it's very debatable, and I can see where fans can kind of have this back and forth as to who is more in the right here. But as you say, yeah, I can see where Payne is coming from as far as talking about whose justice is more righteous than others and things of that nature. So yeah, this is pretty deep.
Two things. The title, we act according to our own sense of justice. Um, Basically, what it's saying there is, as long as I'm good, to hell with everything else. Uh, as long as I'm making moves, to make things better for me, you know, the rest doesn't really matter to me. So that's why, where it says down here, where it says though the fans can't agree with his methods, this is how people live, even these fans.
Right. Right.
I mean, to act like they're not living according to their own sense of whatever justice is complete bull.
Man. Oh
Yeah,
my
like
goodness.
yeah, like I think like I said, had not Payne gave him that pep talk, I think Naruto would probably fought Payne with like a deer in the headlights, basically. You
Well,
know. Yeah.
it was more than just a pep talk because Naruto was naive and oblivious to how rotten and the dirty crap that the leaf and the land of fire, the rotten stuff, the atrocities that they actually committed. Um, he looked at the leaf, through rose-colored glasses. When in the end, they weren't. It wasn't rose-colored. That was blood. It was dry blood.
Right.
Yeah, that's like I don't think Naruto knew the whole history of the Leaf Village because I think had he been more studious and more thorough in what they really done to other countries, then yeah, he probably would have had a difference of opinion on how things were run.
Mm.
See, in a way,
Mm.
in a way, and I'm gonna bring up Logic's question for us here. But in a way, if you think about it, Pain is trying to show Naruto, look, your village is not as rosy and, so to speak, all clean cut as they make you think it is. Sure, there is their side of the story, but let me bring up my side as well. So that way you are not coming into this situation as, so to speak, everything is all bright and colored and everything's all fancy and yada yada yada. And oh, that actually ties into Paul's question for us. Is justice absolute and self-evident, or is justice arbitrary and up to who is deciding what justice is?
Mm. I know which way I'm answering. Uh, I say completely justice is arbitrary, and it's up to who is deciding what justice is.
Well, it can't be justice can't be absolute if it's able to be crumbled, especially by the opposition. So yeah, I gotta side with arbitrary too.
Yeah, I'm leaving arbitrary because again, you you simply can't say, well, my justice is this and it always will be this. When, like you said, JJ, and also what Isaac's saying too, there's other elements. Pretty much, there's two paths that can go to the same goal. So you can't say something is obsolete when there's evidence of, oh, you can get to this same XYZ by just doing this other thing. So yeah, I always think justice is arbitrary and a person can decide what justice is to them.
Mm,
Good
yep.
good thoughts, Jens. Good thoughts.
Yeah, thank you.
Number number 11. Payne says this hatred binds us together. Payne understands that more often than not, People's idea of justice is just a way to make them feel more exceptional than the rest. During peacetime, such individuals will put themselves on pedestals and take credit for ending the war, even if they committed the most atrocities. Everyone is consistently seeking their own sense of justice. Payne understands this concept on a fundamental level because he doesn't have anything else to lose. He is no longer blinded by a singular need for revenge. As such, he feels connected to anyone that hurts the way he once did. Again, pretty straightforward. Number 10. Payne says sometimes you must hurt in order to know. Payne wants humanity to evolve by forcing them to embrace their fear, their suffering, and their inner darkness. No one can truly understand loss if they don't experience it. While his thought process isn't wrong, his means are more than questionable. Pain doesn't mind serving as the catalyst for everyone's hurt. Ultimately, pain conveys the idea that for one to grow past their suffering, one must experience it, sit with it, and learn with it. Jits, your thoughts?
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. Again, we talked about this. Like, pain is necessary for growth. Like that old song, no pain, no gain. So how can you
No,
really
no,
understand
Aretha.
how to, huh?
I
I
say you
heard
broke out the
somebody.
Aretha.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I mean, so that's what Pain. That's why Pain in this arc in Naruto Shippuden, he was going through the extreme of destroying everything in its wake, so that he can have humanity know that pain is necessary for you to achieve peace. How can you have peace without understanding the opposite, pain and suffering? So yeah, that's why he went through the means that he did. So yeah, that's kind of how I see about sometimes you must hurt in order to know.
Yes. Uh, sometimes you must hurt in order to know it. It this hurt. It what it does. It kind of puts things in. It creates clarity for you. It helps you know exactly what it is you want. Um, if it's worth pursuing for you. Um, and if not, what other avenues there are for you. Would you want to experience it again? It really just it lays out everything for you to help make things clear and for you to for you to know what decisions and which road you want to take next.
Mm.
Indeed. So I'm gonna speed up a little bit because I- anyway we're gonna speed this up a bit. Number 9, Payne says no matter how pathetic the reason, it's enough to start a war. It wouldn't be fair to call Payne a nihilist. He wants to reform society because he sees the potential within it, no matter how twisted his methods may seem. Instead, it makes more sense to call Payne a cynic. Most of his contempt for humanity stems from the disappointment he feels regarding humanity's never ending transgressions. He's seen too much war, and because of this, he is convinced that people will always find a reason, any reason, to fight and kill. Now, this is interesting because Logic, he just said it in the chat.
Mm.
It sounds like Payne is reading from Nietzsche,
Nietzsche.
which which is a way is kind of like Payne exemplifies Nietzsche.
Is that German?
Yes,
It
yes, he's
is.
German.
It
Okay.
is.
He's German.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I have to look
See,
that up because I've never seen that.
see, the thing is, and Payne is really saying that, hey, you know, war is inevitable because people are always going to find a reason to fight and kill. I guess this is one of those elements where it's kind of like, okay, is it in human nature to be violent? Now, it's debatable because I would say this is where it comes of nature versus nurture. Okay, is it in nature for somebody to be violent? I would say really it depends on his element, nurture. But it could also kind of be nature because, you know, unless you I don't know. I'll let you gentlemen give your thoughts on that.
Mm. I guess when it comes to absolute survival, I would lean towards nature
Right.
because, as you say, some children may not have a nurturer parent, especially a mother, to help calm their sense of rage, especially against outside forces, right? Like that protection piece. So you take that element away, it's not just the mom, but the father too. Like that child or that creature has to fend for itself. In order to fend for itself, it has to learn how to fight. And if you're not willing to fight, well, nature's gonna take care of you. That's how the way I see it. Let's see.
um, I think it's interesting how society tricks people into thinking that their fight with nature is still over, because you have an establishment with that you can live in with four walls, at least four outside walls and a roof, or whatever it may be. It may be built differently, but
Mm.
you have some pretty secure and seemingly secure and stable walls and a roof, and so it gives people a false sense of security. Society does, into thinking that their fight with nature is over, when actually it's only begun. Instead of it having to be against the animals of the wild, your fight with nature is against other humans. Um, so I think that it's pretty right. Yeah, no matter how pathetic the reason, people are going to find a reason, no matter what it is, to fight, to kill. It really doesn't take too much. I mean, hey, you'll see fights break out over somebody stepping over new shoes. So, I mean, uh, a whole place is torn apart. Restaurants, or whatever the building may be. So, yeah.
YouTube channels.
Oh man.
And then also, I'm reading Sapiens now. When you look at the history of Sapiens,
Mm.
whole species wiped out the moment they learned how to create fire and utilize fire for whatever uses, um and it caused whole species to be wiped out so they could so they could thin the herd of predators to survive. So, I you know I do think that it is a part of basic human instinct. Some, of course, some exhibit it more so than others outwardly, but yeah.
Interesting. All right. Number 8. Payne is quoted saying, just by living, people hurt others without even realizing it. Payne often ponders heavy topics, and it's not surprising he's not afraid to dissect dark subject matters. Payne believes humanity is inherently evil, often claiming humans are only good for hurting each other. He also believes cooperation and peace will never exist between people of different social classes and backgrounds. In the end, humanity is bound to head back to the battlefield once again. According to Payne, as it stands, quote, there is no peace in the world, and quote, war is just a crime paid for by the pain of the defeat. So this is interesting. This is interesting because Payne is saying humanity humanity is bound to just do bad things, which is why, yeah, this is very
Yeah,
deep.
this is super deep.
This-
Man, it opened up a rabbit hole that I don't think a lot of people were ready for.
right, it
Wow.
really does, and this is why it's kind of like, you know, this is why I think people kind of are bound for things like religion and politics because they're afraid to really look at these elements and say that, you know what, yeah, there's some aspects to it that I just saw about. What's your thoughts, good sir? Because
Oh.
I really want to know what's your thoughts on this
Yeah.
one.
I pretty much have to agree. Um, I won't say the inherently evil, and I'll even maybe tweak it a little bit. Where it says just by living, people hurt others without even realizing it. I would add or even caring about it. Um,
Mm,
Yeah, yeah.
good
uh,
point.
Human beings naturally only care about their own standings. Human beings naturally pretty much they don't think about what others are going through until they have to see it in their face. Um, they only think about their own life and what's going on within their own world. Um, and the part about there being no peace in the world and war is just a crime paid for by the pain of the other defeated. Yes, and this is why it's inevitable because you're going to have someone from that defeated who's hey, they're going to say they've paid enough.
Mm,
And it's time for someone else to start paying them, and that's why um, you're going to have this never-ending cycle as long as you have human beings.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that quote is not wrong about saying you hurt people without even realizing it. Whether you say something that they don't like or you disobey their orders, more importantly. Like now they feel like they're inadequate, like they don't have no place in the world, and like their words have pretty much been ignored, right? So there's a lot to unpack off that quote right there. It's just so many angles, but
Uh,
to move on, we'll have to
well,
save it for another
logic
discussion. Yeah.
Logic's finest, says something here that
Huh.
I agree with. I've
Yeah.
said before, where he says here, I didn't say everything verbatim, what he said here, but the character is verbatim from the works of Friedrich Nietzsche. It's not deep; it's the human condition. It's uncomfortable to realize. That's why people most say it's deep or scary because people don't want to have to look in the mirror and realize that that's me too. they
Right.
don't want to have to say that.
You
Yeah,
said me
that's
too.
me too. I fit the bill of that. Yeah.
Yeah,
They don't want to admit that. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to look this out now.
Oh yeah, yeah. Frederick Nietzsche, he is very profound. In fact, Logic said it up here.
Yeah, he mentioned
Yeah,
him.
his work is
Yeah,
quoted alongside the greatest thinkers
his
of all
thinkers.
history. Yeah, yeah. That's
Wow.
Frederick Nietzsche. All right, coming in at number 7, excuse me. This quote from Payne: "If you don't share someone's pain, you can never understand them." Payne makes it his personal mission to inflict pain and suffering. He deems himself the arbiter of truth and thinks he alone can redeem the world. His misguided attempt to share his flawed enlightenment only brings about the same anguish he endured most of his life. Instead of waiting for the next war, Payne decides to wreak havoc throughout the hidden villages to ensure his version of understanding. Though there is truth to understanding through shared experiences, forcing those experiences is wrong. Ooh boy. Yeah, this is a very deep thought. Um, I guess you say this is where it's a flawed with Pain or Nagato, where he feels that because of what he has endured, everybody else should also go through that same element in order to, I guess, understand why it is important to, I guess you say, strive for nonviolence. Just the thought of wanting to be violent should be enough to keep people from wanting to, I guess, in essence, do it by his way of thinking about it. But again, that's some very deep thinking. But gentlemen, y'all thoughts on this quote?
Um,
Mm.
I have to go here. In the context of the story of Naruto, um, he wasn't wrong. Um, it's only through that shared pain that Naruto actually grew and began to understand it. Um, it's because of that pain that he had an understanding of what his village actually had been, and the links and the atrocities the elders in his village that he had looked up to that they actually committed. So in that sense, I can't really say he was wrong. I'm not saying he was right, but in the premise here that sharing that pain is the only way Naruto understood him. He that actually happened. So I think uh he's right. Yeah, he went to extreme. He went to an extreme to get it to happen, but yeah, that shared pain is the only way that Naruto could actually even understand it.
Yeah, I have to agree, and I also see where Sigma's coming from. Not that you have to experience the exact same pain of the person that's inflicting it upon you, but I think from Naruto's point of view, had he studied what the actual history of the Leaf Village and seeing that it wasn't always pacifist, that there were times that it had to be more aggressive and assertive in its domain to maintain its borders or even to absorb territory. I think had he learned all those things for the good, bad, and the ugly, he probably could have approached pain in a more thorough and calculating approach instead of fighting him with a deer in the headlights with the naive thought that I'm doing this for peace and justice, not really understanding Payne's point of view of his own suffering. So yeah, it's very profound. So yeah, I see it both ways from you and Sigma.
Yeah, yeah. All right, number 6. Payne says love breeds sacrifice, which in turn breeds hatred. Then and only then you can know pain. Payne takes a cynical view of love. While most view the ability to love and form meaningful bonds as a strength, Payne slash Nagato feels these things hold humanity back. Payne recognizes the fact that society has gotten comfortable with toxic, shallow relationships. He claims such connections only create jealousy, resulting in a loss. Payne sees every emotion as a gateway to pain, even love. Well,
Oh,
this is a great way to end the month that is considered the month of love.
dang,
Go
Man,
ahead, go
wow.
ahead,
I
go
don't even
ahead,
remember him
Jensen.
saying this.
it's
I don't
funny.
remember him saying this. Wow.
I don't either. But now I do say this because the one thing I always tell people, because human beings have the foolishness to think that the opposite of love is hatred,
Oh no.
which it's not. The
Mm-mm.
opposite of love is apathy.
Yep.
Um, hatred hatred comes about because of the combination of love and pain. Um, you, you don't hate things that you never loved. So I find this one very interesting here. How and whenever they say here that pain sees every emotion as a gateway to pain, even love, it makes me think about that. It makes me think of something I remember in Angel. Gosh, where the character in there said that in actuality, love is everything, isn't it? Meaning that love is a combination of every emotion, uh, both negative and positive. Um, it really made me think about that for a minute, and it's pretty interesting how it kind of comes full circle here with this one.
Yeah. Logic has a question. So is pain a nihilist? I guess you could say in a way, yeah. Because in his mind, every emotion can be tied back to pain. So even I guess in his mind, when two people love each other, eventually somebody in that love, or I guess in that relationship, is going to form some sort of jealousy. Yeah, this is very very deep.
Yeah. Well, it really speaks to his own personal thing because wasn't it oh gosh, what was the girls, because it was three of them. I can't remember her
Right.
name, but
Yeah, I think it's
she
it's it
like
starts with a
she like
K.
yeah, God, I can't think of her. But she actually liked Yahiko more than him. So, it kind of created a slight bit of jealousy there, but you know, when you look at it here, the loss of Yahiko, um, it created a pain that was just so insurmountable that even though he loved Yahiko, yeah,
Oh,
it
okay.
does it does kind of come around.
Somebody
So
in the
yeah,
chat
he is
said
an
it.
odd
Conan, that's the name.
Conan, yeah,
Yeah,
Conan, that's
Conan.
Conan.
right.
Yeah, that what it was, Conan. But yeah, yeah. Let's move to number 5. So Payne says, when I had nothing and no one, I always had pain. Before he became Pain, Pain was Nakato. Nagato lost everything and everyone he ever loved, except Conan. To Pain, his attachment to his parents, his village, and Yahiko only resulted in his anguish.
Mm.
Losing everything he held dear hardened his heart, and he no longer feared pain and loss. Death was just part of life to him. Tragically, Nagato's consistent misfortune causes him to have a twisted kinship with pain. Anger, loss, and suffering are the most familiar emotions to him. Ah, let me get through these quotes real quick because
Okay.
I really want to speed this up to
Okay. Go ahead.
to really get to the last segment of it, so that way we can kind of like give our overall thoughts. So that was number five. Number four, he quoted saying, "We're just ordinary people driven to revenge in the name of justice." Payne has had some rather astute observations about the nature of vengeance, especially considering that he seeks to avenge humanity as a whole by causing widespread unrest and death. Payne is quite insightful about the nature of society. In particular, he criticizes humanity's hypocrisy in declaring their pursuit to avenge their loved ones and force the quote bad guys unquote to take accountability. Payne declared, quote, justice would only breed more revenge, unquote. There will always be someone who feels wrong, and if they enact their revenge, those who suffer as a result will also seek vengeance. The cycle is never ending. Number three, Payne says, those who do not understand true pain can never understand true peace. The crux of Payne's entire endgame is the idea of harboring peace through suffering. He believes people cause each other harm because they don't comprehend the consequences of their actions. If they've never truly felt pain themselves, then they wouldn't understand it. Pain people can claim to be empaths, but it's just an empty word when they don't truly put themselves in another person's shoes. Payne claims such inconsiderate behavior results in constant war. Number two, the world will know real pain. Payne repeatedly states he wants the world to know actual pain. He believes that, quote, the fear instilled by that pain will prevent wars. Ironically, Payne wants a world filled with stability and peace, but his methods are gruesome and unforgiving. He is willing to enact decades of torment and misery because he believes peace will be achieved eventually. However, he also asserts that this peace will be temporary and fighting will ensue once more, but peace will be found yet again. He dreams of an endless cycle of hatred that will bring about sporadic moments of true peace. And then finally, number one, things I couldn't see when I was a human are clear to me now that I am a god. Pain believes through never ending pain, he has evolved past human understanding. When Jiraiya asked Pain his thoughts on abandoning the love of friends, Pain states that Jiraiya is still just a man. He trivializes human emotions and declares himself a god, believing his words and thoughts are absolute. He's able to reject his sensei's pleas before he believes Jiraiya simply doesn't understand what he's saying. His morality prevents him from comprehending Pain's self proclaimed godhood. When Pain decided to rebuild the war torn world, he convinces himself that it's the work of a god and that there are things he could do with which man cannot. Pain deludes himself into thinking he is the god of peace and that total devastation is the only way to mature the world. So, gentlemen, your thoughts now after hearing all of this combined, because I want to get to the final segment. Actually, in a way, this actually now ties into the last segment of the stream. Can you live in Payne's world? So let's really get right into it. So if let's look at it from two elements. Could you live in a world where I guess you could say Payne is finally the god of peace, where he now rules everything and everything that he has worked for is now in his domain, to where he now rules the mindset, so to speak? Or you live in a world where everybody thinks, I guess you could say, thinks like Nakato, aka Pain. So I'm first going to start with Isaac because I see the conversation, Isaac, you mentioned with Logic in the chat. But now that we're in this final segment, would you be able to live in Pain's world?
Mm. That's a tough one. That's a difficult one to answer because it would be honest. It would depend upon the type of pain that he would inflict for someone. Um, I think he would. I think he would find inventive ways to inflict pain upon different individuals. I think as almost a toss up. I possibly could, and I possibly couldn't. It would just depend on how extreme I think he got with me.
Mm, that is a good point because in a way, it really would depend on, I guess, how he feels. So, in other words, now that I'm thinking about it, in Payne's world is actually, in a way, a world almost ruled by emotions because now it depends on how he feels about
Well, you could say, I guess, unstable emotions
you.
because
Right,
it could be shifting, so you you never know what it would be from moment to moment.
right.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's what makes it so. For me, it would be very questionable too, just based on how he's feeling, or he achieved devastation so much to where now he is the absolute ruler of the shinobi world, and those who are lucky enough to survive are his subjects, and if things are chill and everybody's, I guess, happy and there's no more beef and conflict, and okay, yeah, I guess I'll be okay in his world. But then again, I mean, if everybody were to survive and then there's still this harboring resentment towards some of the things that Pain did to not just the people that he inflicted upon who survived, but the ones who didn't survive, the survivors are going to remember that. And like, man, he might be the guy and all, but we got to stop him. There has to be a way to defeat Pain. So I might be on that camp. So on one hand, it's not completely peaceful then if people are still harboring resentment or they don't like the fact that Pain is in power. So it's very shaky. So in a way, peace hasn't truly been achieved. So that's what makes this hard for me to accept living in his world.
See, I my summary of this, of whether I would be able to live in Payne's world. Logic said it best with his last quote. All emotions are unstable. It takes our higher thinking to control them. Hence, self mastery. And
Mm.
this is where, just speaking for myself, if I was able to, would I be able to live in a world where either Pain, aka Nagato, rules everyone, or everybody thinks like him? I definitely would say no. And reason why I say I probably would not be able to live in Pain's world is, first off, just the mere fact that I now think completely even if it's just a small hint of you know difference of opinion, just the mere fact that I now just think opposite of Payne in some sort of disagreement, I've now become Payne's number one target
Yep.
just by default.
Yeah, I mean that's the crazy part. Like, how is peace truly achieved? Is there's somebody out there that's now on the same page, and they're thinking of taking down Payne just because they don't like how society's run. So that's the big issue there, living in his world. So yeah,
Well,
it would never be stable in
well,
that sense.
I'll say this. It. I mean, you trying to achieve justice by slaying him, the beast. That is the rule of his world. That's how it would go. Uh,
So in a way, it's almost like
yeah,
Makoto Shishio,
yeah,
survival of the fittest
Right,
now.
right.
That's what we're looking at here. So now it's peace for the strong, not for the weak. It's just for the strong. Damn.
Well, I think that I think the slight difference is that Payne would be thinking that he would be making even some of the weak stronger by doing this,
Mm.
whereas
The underlying thing
Mc-
here, would they all be? They might be stronger than they were before. Will they all be equally strong?
no,
Nah.
there's no such thing as equality anyway.
Yeah.
but whereas for me, I think Makoto, it was more about his own twisted version of the world. I think his world that he wanted to create was a little bit even more twisted than Payne's was.
Yeah,
At
it
least
was.
with Payne's, it was about forming some type of understanding with each other. It might have been through pain, but
Yeah.
it was forming some kind of bond. Whereas with Makoto, it wasn't.
Oh
Right.
no.
I,
Yeah.
I I
Shisho's
would
will
say the
be so much
different
more cutthroat. Oh my gosh.
right. I would say the main difference between Makoto's way of thinking and um Payne's way of thinking. Makoto, his world would be all absolute chaos.
Mhm.
Where Payne, he's actually looking for some sort of order, even if it's a means of that order is a never-ending cycle of hatred.
Yeah, vengeance and pain. Yeah.
Right. Makoto is the Makoto's world is just where, so to speak, everybody fends for themselves. So there's really no order because, so to speak, you're just doing what you need to do to survive.
Yeah.
Whereas Makoto, or excuse me, whereas Payne, he's actually in his ways of thinking, he's actually still trying to find some mean of order to bring peace, even though that order is it's a non-ending cycle.
Right. Right.
So it's interesting. I yeah, I'm thinking now because like even because we talked about it on Makoto's stream, where would we be able to live in his world or whatnot. Technically, yeah, in Makoto's world, I'll probably be able to live in his world because, so to speak, it's survival of the fittest. Now it's just okay. Can I be able to topple the next man that I'm confronted with in that cycle? Whereas in Payne's world, like I said, just the mere fact that I am slightly thinking opposite of his way of thinking, that now makes me his number one target from that point forward. So, in essence, I am constantly looking behind my back or my shoulder because he's now out to destroy. So honestly, in both cases, I mean, it's different compared to say living in a world of Sasuke Aizen or living in a world of Doctor Doom, where Doctor Doom is just like, hey, as long as you are not messing with me, I'm cool with you. Same with Sasuke Aizen. As long as you not going too crazy where you just trying to deal with me, whatnot, we can live peacefully. But these two, Makoto Shishio and Pain, is now where actually you need to be on your pins and needles every single second.
Yeah, either
But
way, I mean, you have to look, yeah, like you said, you have to look out for yourself. And then, yeah, like in Payne's world, just don't defy him whatsoever. Otherwise, he will know. But in Shisho's world, it's pretty cut, straightforward, pace and dry. Like, yeah, I got to fight for myself and for my own survival every single day until I no longer can't. Thus, survival of the fittest. So yeah, either world, like, yeah, you have to fight. You have to be strong and, you know, live.
yeah, that's something. So actually, I think now because we pretty much have kind of come to this conclusion, you know, with Pain, even now, just I still lean towards Payne's, at least somewhat his philosophy of the fact that, hey, two people are always going to have differences of opinion. So there's never going to be this world of, so to speak, everybody is thinking the same thing. On that regard, I completely agree with Payne on that. In regards of, yeah, no two people are going to think alike. So there's always going to be differences of opinion in that regard. Now, as far as living in a constant world of vengeance, yeah, I like to have my own space of just leave me alone in that regard. But yeah, it still though, just the whole concept of there's always going to be differences of opinion. People just need to embrace it. They just need to embrace, those differences. Even just embracing there's going to be some sort of failures and all. There's always going to be that element. Now, personally, I feel like you should take those elements and still be able to, make yourself better out of it. That element of it, but that's completely different, different stream and different subject. So, with that said, gentlemen, now that we come to this conclusion, what would be your final thoughts now of Pain? So, Eisen, the Dark Lord, I'm gonna start with you in that regard.
Okay. Um, my final thoughts are that we are. I mean, we're already living in a small scale version of Pain's world. You can't escape pain.
Right.
Um, as long as you're alive, you can't escape it. So either you can find the courage to overcome it, or end up being debilitated by it. The choice ultimately is up to you.
Right on, right on.
Yeah, my thoughts on Pain, man. Like, well, first off, shout out to Kishimoto for putting out a character like this. You
Right?
know, yeah, putting out a character like this to
Like
really
like
not
Logic
just,
said, like
huh?
Logic said in the chat, clearly he has had to have read the works of Frederick Nietzsche just to come up with the of character like Pain. He had to did some research of Nietzsche. But go ahead, JJ.
Well, Kishimoto had to done some research on human psychology and also the study of war to put together a character like this, because otherwise, I don't think the Naruto story really goes as deep as this particular Great Shinobi War, the fourth Shinobi War, right? So yeah,
Hmm.
with Pain coming into the scene and wreaking all sorts of havoc and devastation to the point where he's having to make everybody understand what he had to go through as a child onto his adulthood. Man, it's I have to say, brilliant works by Kishimoto, right? So as far as like the character himself, like yeah, like I said, he's cunning. He's definitely charismatic because he's approaching things in a very, very abrupt, straightforward manner to the point where he's even having to tell the eventual Hokage, the seventh Hokage of Naruto, about how the world truly works. And that he doesn't even know his own history. Thus, this is why he's doing all this. Part of the reason, anyway. I mean, it's definitely a great story. I mean, wow. I have to commend Kishimoto on that for sure. But yeah, overall, like, could I survive in Payne's world? Like I said, depends whether he truly achieves stable peace. And if it's not, sustainable to where he's not really God, like, he said to Jirai, he's like a god now. But if he's not a godlike entity, he's just like a superior ruler. Then there will be shinobi in the future that will conjure up a scheme or a plot to overthrow him. And once again, the cycle of hatred will continue. So yeah, it's very questionable on whether or not he can truly achieve peace. But his methods on how to do it, yes, it's very relatable for pretty much anyone to understand. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely have to say, out of all the streams so far, this is probably the first stream where it's really like a deep dive in pretty much just the dark side of human psychology,
Yeah.
and really, you know, how would we go about it in that way? So shout out to, like you said, shout out to Mr. Moto for creating Pain and all the character Pain. Definitely, definitely. I mean, definitely, he's not my number one character. I mean, I definitely think there's definitely more characters that have deeper developments, like, you know, we just talking about Sasuke Eyes and Doctor Doom and whatnot. But still, just as far as like, if you could create a personification of a dark human behavior, you just created Pain. And definitely a great work of art at that. So, with that said, gentlemen, definitely want to thank you both because this was a great stream, and definitely thanks to the audience for listening in on this deep dive of Pain and the work of Nagato. But this is definitely one of the reasons why we created this type of stream, Villain of the Month, to really deep dive and see, like, hey, the 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 average villain is not just an average villain. There's some deep psychology to it. Why, these guys think the way they think. And it's a great element. So shout out to everybody for the stream. Shout out, for the compadres like Isaac Sama and JJ Starwin. You know, this is a great level of thinking. But thankfully, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and those listening in on the replay. A great stream again, nonetheless. Looking forward to next month. I have to look through my next month stream, but I want to say I believe next month is actually going to be Itachi. And don't quote me on it. I definitely have to double check, but I think Itachi is next up, if I want to say, on that. So we actually continue on. I guess you would say in the world of Naruto in that regard. But until next time, thanks for listening in for the Village of the Month. And we will be tuning in to the next stream. So definitely keep your wits about yourself, ladies and gentlemen. But until next time, thank you for tuning in. So we are now going to close out with the usual words from our good friend, Prophet of Thought, in regards of the villains of the month.
The villains. For every good guy, there must be the bad guy. Society looks upon villains with disdain because they refuse to follow the rules. But are these villains really bad or misunderstood? Are they truly out for chaos and blood? Or are they more willing to get out of their comfort zones than the average Joe? Join us for our Villain of the Month discussion. We will break down their philosophy, their past, and their psychology. And then you decide for yourself if these villains are humans or if they are monsters.